In 1963, I applied for and received one of those rare special assignments that sometimes you get in the military, where I was able to take my family with me off to Paris, France. My kids went to high school in Paris. I received what many of us in the military consider to be a plum assignment. I was assigned to the Supreme Headquarters Allied Powers in Europe, which at that time was located in a little town just outside of Paris, France. I arrived there at SHAPE headquarters in the summer of 1963. I arrived with a top secret clearance, and I was immediately given an upgrade to a cosmic top secret clearance, which was and still is the highest level of security classification that NATO has. I was further assigned into a place we called SHOC, the Supreme Headquarters Operations Center. As such, I worked in the SHAPE War Room. Now, many of you, I'm sure, have seen photographs and pictures of what these war rooms look like. Most of you are probably familiar with what you've seen on films about NORAD, the big display, the big maps, the telephones, the teletypes, the computers, and all of that. Well, the state of the art in 1963 was not quite so advanced as it is today. But we did have a functional operating war room there in SHAPE headquarters in Paris in 1963. Now, it's also important that I share with you that SHAPE's theater of operation was the entire NATO theater of operation, all the way from northern Norway to the southern tip of Turkey. Every military activity going on inside of NATO's theater of operations was commanded and controlled from that SHAPE war room. When I arrived, I was a senior master sergeant at the time. I had just been promoted. I was put in charge of all of the younger men. I also, because of the work that I had done and some of the background that I had, after a time was given a job of being involved in intelligence analysis. Intelligence analysis is simply a way of bringing together bits and pieces of information and data. We had reports from intelligence operatives in the field in Poland, Czechoslovakia, East Germany. We had operatives at work in the field in the Soviet Union itself. We were getting input continually from all over the Warsaw Pact area. Trying to analyze an intelligence flow of information is basically like putting a jigsaw puzzle together, where you got all these little pieces with all these different colors, and you don't know where they belong. But once you begin to fit them together, weigh them, sift them, and analyze them, you find that after a time, they begin to make a picture. This literally is what intelligence analysts do. It's what I did. It's what I was brought into. I was trained in those days to become an intelligence analyst. It's the most exciting work I think I've ever done. When I arrived in the summer of 1963, I learned of a study that had been initiated by NATO headquarters in 1961. It intrigued me. Everybody working in SHOC would gossip about it. There were whispers, there was talk. But we didn't know very much about it. All we knew is that the subject, the study, involved UFOs. I vividly remember the first time I was ever exposed to the SHAPE study. I was working in the war room one morning. We were on 24-hour shifts in those days. I usually set these shifts up, and I was working in there one morning about 1 or 2 in the morning. I remember I was bored because the war room was quiet. Very little was going on. The teletype machines were quiet. The phones were not ringing. Most everybody was nodding off. We'd read all of the magazines and all of the old newspapers. The coffee was too black to drink. And I remember I must have attracted the colonel's attention, the controller who was on duty that morning, an American full colonel, United States Air Force, by the name of Frank Collins. Colonel Collins came over and he handed this document to me that he'd pulled out of the vault. And he said, "Read this, this'll wake you up." It not only woke me up, it changed my life. The study was initiated to determine whether there was a threat to Allied forces in Europe. It was a strictly military study directly focused on one thing. Is there or is there not a threat to our military forces in Europe? Now, for those of you who may remember those years, we in the Soviets and the Warsaw Pact area were looking at each other across a divided Europe in the 60s. On both sides, the NATO forces, the Allied forces, the Warsaw Pact forces across the border that divided Europe, we each and every one of us had our fingers on the triggers. We had our thumbs poised above those red buttons. World War III was only a few moments away. The study was initiated in '61 by Air Marshal Sir Thomas Pike. SHAPE initiated a special UFO study program. They called it an assessment. They also gave it a subtitle of an evaluation of a possible military threat to Allied forces in Europe. Now, this study was initiated primarily because of a number of incidents that had been happening over the years. And all through the late 50s and early 60s, large numbers of circular metallic objects were flying all over Central Europe. I must tell you that not only were they flying then, but they're still flying today. These objects were circular, they were metallic, they were flying at a very high altitude, in formation, obviously under intelligent control. They would generally fly out of the Soviet sector from the east, over Central Europe, over a divided Germany, over France, southern England, over the southern coast of England. These formations would generally turn north and disappear off of NATO radar over the Norwegian Sea. Now, for a number of years, the Soviets thought those objects belonged to us. And for a time, we thought they actually might belong to the Soviets. Once the study was initiated in '61, and once it was published in 1964, it became very apparent that neither the Soviets nor we had that kind of technology to put that kind of technology in the skies. So the big question was simply this: who are they? Why are they here? And where are they from? Now, their flying over Europe had a number of times almost had we and the Soviets shooting at each other. So in 1961, after a particular incident at 2 o'clock in the morning on the 2nd of February, 1961,
where roughly 50 of these objects flew over in formation at a high rate of speed, obviously under intelligent control, did the same damn thing. The Soviets went on red alert. They closed all of the borders in Berlin. We went on red alert. Everybody responded. When the teletypes were going off, the phones were all ringing. All hell was breaking loose all over Central Europe. We thought the war had begun.
After it became very clear that those objects didn't belong to us, and we knew that they didn't belong to the Soviets, both sides of our Iron Curtain were trying to come to terms with what was really happening here. Air Marshal Sir Thomas Pike, who at that time was the Deputy Supreme Allied Commander in Europe, he worked closely with and for my boss, General Lyman Lemnitzer, an American Army four-star general who was known as SACEUR, the Supreme Allied Commander in Europe. Air Marshal Pike initiated this study to determine just what in the hell is going on. Who are these guys? Where are they from? What do they want? We were to learn over the course of the next 2 years that the Soviets had a study of the same kind. They themselves were trying to determine what was happening there. Well, let me tell you, it took a full 3 years of focused military study to determine what this issue was all about. They published 15 copies only. Cosmic top secret, the highest level of security classification that NATO had and still has even today. Copy number 1 was given to the Secretary General of NATO. Copy number 2 went to my boss, General Lyman Lemnitzer, the Supreme Allied Commander. Copy number 3 was placed in the vault in shock in our war room. That was the copy that I had access to. That was the copy that I was able to pull out of the vault every chance I got. Now, what did that document essentially say that made such a difference to me, that impacted me so much? It not only affected me, but it affected every one of us at the headquarters who read it. It affected the air deputy, an American Air Force 4-star general by the name of Robert Lee. When General Lee read this, his aide told me that the old man sat at his desk, he unbuttoned his blouse, he threw his hat across the desk, and he says, "Do you know what this means? Have you any idea what this means? Nothing will ever be the same." He says all of our missiles, all of our rockets, all of our thermonuclear weapons, everything we have is meaningless. Nothing will ever be the same after this. Now, the old man was so affected by it that literally he submitted his retirement papers within the year after this document was published. So it had an effect upon him, it had an effect upon General Lemnitzer, an effect upon Air Marshal Pike. Everyone who was involved in this study, who had read it and knew what it meant, who for a moment would grasp the implications and the ramifications of it, were affected by it. Now, when the document was published in the summer of 1964, there were a few basic conclusions, and I will share those with you. Remember, this was a purposeful military study, and they ended up with a military conclusion. The planet Earth, this is really what rocked my boat, changed my life. The planet Earth, and apparently the entire human race, is and has been the subject of an extensive, intensive, and massive survey and examination by several extraterrestrial civilizations. This survey has been extremely thorough and detailed. That's a zinger in itself. That'll get your attention. These civilizations have demonstrated not only high intelligence, but an extremely advanced technology that may be possibly hundreds, if not thousands of years beyond ours. Evidence collected and studied by this report indicates that apparently there is some kind of process or plan unfolding. They continually demonstrate that the development of some kind of program is underway. Evidence in this report leads to the conclusion that this survey has been going on for a very long time, possibly several thousands of years. Military intelligence analysis have concluded that there did not appear to be a major military threat involved. The conclusions seem to indicate that if they were either malevolent or hostile, that there was absolutely nothing that we could do at that time. And I must tell you that that same thing applies today. NATO and shape policy dictates that an ongoing study continue by the various military committees, and that as many resources as possible by the major powers be committed to this matter. This entire subject is considered to be of the highest importance and extremely sensitive. This committee recommends that the highest level of classification be placed upon this matter, if approved by SACURE, to be at least cosmic or above cosmic top secret.